This wonderful piece of technology is a Socket 775 computer. The high end of Socket 775 was pushing quad cores forward with the Core 2 Quad series of chips. And the low end also existed. Imagine this for a second. You buy a brand new CPU at an MSRP of just $39, and that CPU can be overclocked with just 2 BIOS settings to 148% of its advertised performance. No additional cooling, and using one of the cheapest motherboards out there, even for the time. It sounds crazy because if that was, for example, a 14900K modern Intel CPU, that would be taking a 6 GHz CPU and running it at 9 GHz, which is just not a thing. But back in 2007, this was a reality with one of Intel's worst CPUs they've ever made. This right here. This is the Intel Celeron 420, with a launch price of $39, a single CPU core, running a single thread at an incredible 1.6 GHz. This is the worst CPU Intel ever released for the Socket 775 platform. You know when you open Task Manager and switch it to the view that shows all of the individual threads? You cannot do that with this CPU. The option just doesn't exist because there's only one thread to see. You'll notice how this is also a graph that would usually look something like this, changing every once in a while. With this CPU, it kind of just stays as a flat line right there at 100% usage. I was gonna say we should start a benchmark, but we're kind of already doing it. Anyways, let's get the experience of overclocking a $39 CPU in 2007. And of course it needs competition, so it is going to be going up against one of the good CPUs for this socket, the Core 2 Quad Q8400, released about 2 years later. First things first, before the gaming test, let's look at a synthetic benchmark to get an idea of the performance difference we're actually looking at. In Cinebench R15, the Core 2 Quad will usually get around 275 points. And with very minimal effort, I was able to get a score of 314 just by running it at slightly over 3 GHz. So then, what does the 420 do? 31 points. About 10 times lower of a performance score. To give you a point of reference, that score makes this CPU competitive with this, a netbook that came with Windows XP. This was one of the cheapest laptops you could buy when it came out in 2009 with its Intel Atom CPU. But just wait a minute there, I said that this thing overclocked well. How hard is that to do? I changed 2 settings. I set the voltage to plus 100 millivolts, and then I set the FSB value to 298. That's it. That's all I did. People have definitely gotten this CPU to go faster than this, but with my RAM and this cheap, not exactly gaming motherboard, it will blue screen with an FSB of anything like 300 or over. But even this simple overclock takes the CPU from 1.6 GHz all the way to 2.4 GHz, changing our 31 Cinebench score to a blazing fast 46. I mean, I'm not gonna complain about an improvement here, and I think that could actually make a really big difference in games. Let's check out the games. I've put together a list of games, oldest to newest, starting perfectly in line with our 2007 CPU, 2007's Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which got a mostly playable 30 to 50 frames per second. Definitely some stuttering, but it's not that bad. Apply our zero effort overclock, and that FPS becomes something that hardly ever goes below 50. Stuttering is almost non-existent, and it spends a ton of time up in the 80 frames per second range. To compare this to a good Socket 775 CPU, the $180 Core 2 Quad. It's a little better. It gets between 200 and 300 FPS most of the time. Going 2 years into the future with Modern Warfare 2, the 420 does not really provide a playable experience, usually below 20 FPS. It's definitely better overclocked, but still below 30, where the good chip gets 80. And I think that you should subscribe so I can buy even more outdated computer hardware. And I will have a cool announcement around the 10K mark. 9.86, that's coming up pretty soon. Time to go more modern with 2013's Tomb Raider and its in-game benchmark. Once again, the 420 does not provide playable frame rates with a minimum around 8, but get that overclock applied and that minimum doubles with average frame rates going from 24 to 41. I would argue that that makes this a pretty playable experience. You know, not amazing, but it would work. And if you do want amazing, the Q8400, it gets an average of 197 frames per second. A little bit more impressive. Representing 2015 in PC gaming, Grand Theft Auto 5, which I ran at 800 by 600 and still only managed to get 10 frames per second, which the overclock impressively doubled, but ultimately it was still not playable. Our Q8400 is 6 years older than GTA 5 on PC, yet it managed over 100 FPS, and that was in 1080p, not even the little window. And now I think it's time for a game that is currently actually modern, BeamNG Drive. Your clock speed is below 2 GHz. This application will not run well on only one physical core. And yeah, we don't have that much RAM. This error? We don't speak about this error. It is not to be named. Much like that error message, the frame rate never really showed up either. Overclocked frame rate is doubled to about 6. And despite being a 17-year-old processor, the Core 2 Quad still pulls through with over 100 frames per second. And with that, it's time to let our 19-year-old Celeron 420 rest once again. Oh yeah, 19 years old. The Celeron 420 can officially buy weed. You might have noticed that my testing today was done on Windows 7. This chip does run Windows 10. It is very slow running Windows 10. I would hazard to say it would probably also run Windows 11, but I did not care to test that after Windows 10 took as long as it did to do anything. Anyways, thank you for watching, get subscribed, and come back next week. And good night to the Celeron 420. It was never a good CPU, but today it reminds us that overclocking used to actually do something. Yep, that's it.